Hello, everybody, and welcome. It is great to have you here today. Thank you so much for joining me in this session of U.S. visa options for international technology professionals, entrepreneurs, and investors. My name is Sophie Alcorn, and my lawyer disclaimer is that this presentation is an educational service by Alcorn Immigration Law. All information discussed should not be construed as legal advice for any specific action and is an overview only. Please be sure to consult a knowledgeable professional one-on-one for assistance with your particular issue. So this is general immigration information. It is not legal advice for your specific situation. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started, and I will also share some housekeeping. But my name is Sophie Alcorn, and I'm the founder of Alcorn Immigration Law in Palo Alto, California, in Silicon Valley in the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm the host of the Sophie Alcorn podcast. I've had hundreds of columns with the online technology newspaper TechCrunch. I meditate, I'm a mom, and I think the world, I believe and I feel the world should be a place where every person, every child who is born has the opportunity to grow up and go to the place where they can self-actualize and work in their flow state and, work at that intersection of where their greatest talents meet the world's greatest needs. And you can always contact me at sophie@alcorn.law. So what we are doing today is we have a 90-minute session together. This is going to be recorded, and you will be receiving follow-up materials from my team via email today. So thank you so much for registering. I am happy to answer any questions you have. I'll be reviewing my slide deck and sharing my presentation on the main options for people in tech, for founders, for scaling teams, for investors. So I have lots of material to share with you today on the nitty-gritty of how these visas work, how green cards work, how you can live and work legally in the United States on your own company. Whether you are already in the United States as an immigrant, such as an international student, or maybe you're working at a big tech company, or maybe you've never even applied for a visa to the US before and you've never visited, but you're thinking about moving here to be in the heat of the action and in the heart of the whole thing. So we'll be covering a lot, and I am happy to take your questions. As I posted a few minutes ago, the best way for you to do that is to use the Zoom webinars Q&A panel. There's an option for you to mark yourself as an anonymous attendee, and that way your information stays private. and confidential, because this is being recorded, and this will be shared with others in the future. And I want to give a big thanks to Rob Lau for having me here today. It's a wonderful community, and I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to present. So thank you so much, Rob. Okay. Now we are going to proceed. So we're just going to dive right in. And if you ever need to get in touch with me or my team, you'll find this QR code scattered throughout the presentation. We'll also be sharing our contact information at the end, and you're always welcome to reach out and book a time with my team or me for a consultation to discuss your specific pathway and legal options and how we might be able to support you. I will answer questions throughout as I can, but probably I will save, I will be able to answer most questions at the end in the time that I'm going to be reserving specifically for questions as well. So thank you. I already see the first question, so that's great. Okay. And we are going to be speaking about H-1B positions, and hiring and offering those opportunities to globally top qualified talent. So great. Okay. And I see Rob is getting the chat going as well. So thank you so much, Rob. Okay, so we'll get started here. Why might you be interested in US immigration? Well, there are tons of reasons, and they're all okay, whatever they are. The trends that I see the most with my clients, we've helped over 5,000 people from over 100 countries successfully immigrate to the United States since I founded Alcorn Immigration Law 10 years ago. This September is actually our 10-year anniversary. And I'm going to be taking all questions via chat in the Q&A panel. I'm not going to be able to do verbal Q&A today. So definitely please put your question in the Q&A panel, and then I'll be getting to those at the end. Okay, so people have a lot of motivations. One of them is to create something new, to invent, to do research. Maybe you're already in the US in a university lab situation. Maybe you need to come here because you want to create something for the US market, and you want to figure out how to get product market fit here. Maybe you've already created something in another country, but you're in a market where it's difficult to scale and raise additional venture funding. Or maybe you're creating a really amazing AI technology and you need to be in the heart of things here in the San Francisco Bay Area to live here, to legally work here, to attract a super talented, small, fast-paced team of velociraptor people like you, and to be able to go through due diligence with US investors and meet angels. And they often want to be in a 90-minute drive of the companies they're advising. You might need to go have coffee on Sand Hill Road with a VC. So all of that is very geographically specific, and AI is definitely centered in the San Francisco Bay Area right now, today, September 2025. If you're a bit further along, you might need to scale in the US. You might want to go to market in the US. You might want to get that traction here that will increase your valuation to a unicorn, decacorn, or beyond. We're seeing really high valuations right now for AI companies. So being here around the US VCs can be very, very impactful for your future growth trajectory. On a personal level, maybe you've always dreamt about being in the US and growing your career here. Maybe you want to be a serial entrepreneur, or maybe you're a technologist or scientist and you see your startup as the first stop among many in a career that you would like to be able to choose. Many of my clients are interested in commercial space technology right now, and a lot of that is subject to export controls. So getting here, getting a visa, getting on the path to a green card can really open up the types of technologies and hardware that you are allowed to be working in. And additionally, on the personal and the family side, maybe you've just always wanted to live in the US your whole life. Maybe you grew up watching Friends and you relate to US culture more than you relate to your culture in your home country. Maybe you feel out of place back home because people don't understand your dreams and ambitions, and you want to be in a place that's more forgiving of failure and fresh starts and continuous improvement, that's open to change and disruption, because we definitely have that culture here in the San Francisco Bay Area. And if you're at the stage of your life where you're married and maybe you have kids, you need to consider pathways for people in your nuclear family. Can your spouse come with you? Can they work? How long can your kids be dependent on your status until they're 21? And then what are you going to do for them after if they love the United States and want to go to college here and get a job here? How do you help them secure their green cards while they're still teenagers or earlier? So there is such a dynamic constellation of motivations and personal factors that I see when I talk to clients and potential clients. And often it boils down to two things, freedom and security. And you can boil that down further to one thing, which is peace of mind. So although the immigration system has a lot of tumultuousness about it, that's showcased in the media right now, we are consistently winning cases. The system is working. Even though the I-485 phase of the green card process is supposed to take 12 to 36 months, a client of ours from India with his wife and teenage daughter just got their I-485s approved in less than, it was like 6 weeks. So good things are happening. Nobody talks about them, but I'm here to say that this is absolutely possible, and there are many ways to navigate the US market. Okay, so I'm going to set the stage before we dive into the specific visas and then the green card categories. I'm going to dive in and share a little bit more on the immigration context and our system, and just why and how it works. So, and what will also help me, and I see Rob already got the party started with asking where everybody is tuning in from. But if you want to share, a little bit more about yourself or your goals in the chat window, like, I'm an international student in New York looking to start my first startup, or, I'd like to move to the US to San Francisco from Brazil to start my AI startup, anything like that, you're welcome to share. I'd love to learn a little bit more about you. But whoever you are, I'm sure you're in the right place, and I'll try to answer all of your questions and make sure you have the information you need today to leave this webinar feeling more knowledgeable and empowered with confidence about some of the pathways that might be right for you, either to build towards in the future or to even potentially navigate in the short term. So we're going to cover visas, green cards, founder relocation, how to bring your family, and how to bring your team members to the US to live and work legally. And a lot of founders are perfectionists, and a lot of people in that perfectionist realm have something dubbed imposter syndrome. So before we dive in, I do also just want to assure you that these immigration options and pathways are agnostic as to many factors that intelligent people would think that the US immigration system would care about in evaluating whether they should come to the US. But actually, they are not part of the legal framework, and they don't matter at all. So it doesn't matter if you ever went to college, or even if you did, if you dropped out and if you didn't graduate, it's fine. It doesn't matter if you have, if you have a PhD, great, or a postdoc, fine, we can probably work with it. But if you're 19 and you've done, and you took a gap year, but you discovered a startup, there's still maybe options for you. So education is not a determining factor. The government doesn't really understand or care about various stages of creating your product. So if you're like, I don't even have an MVP yet, but I think I have to be in the US to build it, or I am bootstrapping this and I don't have funding yet. I need to be in the US to do that. Or I have something, but we're still, it might still be in the solution and search of a problem phase, but if I could get to the US, then I could test and iterate to find product market fit. Like, I'm not a unicorn yet. I don't know an IPO yet. I don't have a Nobel Prize. That is okay. You do not need these things to navigate the US immigration process. So please do not let those types of fears stop you. Also, for all the women founders in the audience, I have noticed with some of my female clients that although they are very qualified for certain things, you might not be as confident. And if the list says, well, you need 3 of 8, you might be like, oh, I only have 4, so I shouldn't apply yet. But please try to like catch that in your, mental chatter, because you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be good enough to get through the system. So that's what we're going to aim for. Okay, so as I've mentioned, there are 3 main categories of US immigration things. So if you are going to come for a temporary period of time to do a limited set of activities, you're going to want to get a visa. That's the fastest way to get here. If you're in another country, we can often get you here in about 6 months or less, if everything goes smoothly, including things at your consulate. And you're usually going to be able to be here for 6 months to 6 or 7 years, but maybe you're going to get your status in 2 or 3 year increments. So that's kind of the basic formula for a visa. Now, if you want to stay here for the rest of your life and have the opportunity to become a citizen and get a US passport, you'll definitely need to be targeting a green card, which is the route to permanent residence. There's a couple flavors. If you're getting a green card from outside the United States, it's called an immigrant visa. If you're getting it from inside the United States, it's called adjustment of status. And then you would get the possibility of a work permit and travel permission called advanced parole along the way. But the green card it kind of slowed down in recent years. And for most like normal-ish people, it's at least a 3 to 4 year process these days. If you're from India or China, it's going to be substantially longer. And if you're like super extraordinary, let's discuss it. It's the EB1 category. If you can be an EB1 and you're not from India or China, maybe you can get a green card in like 2 years. But that miracle family I was talking about, they started the process with me last October, and they went from starting their EB1, getting their EB1, starting their adjustment of status, and getting their green cards all within 9 months. So that was amazing. Now, if you one day want to become a US citizen, the benefits would be you could be a digital nomad, you can travel around the world, you can be gone as long as you want, you don't have to maintain residence in the US, you can sponsor your parents for green cards, but you would be subject to paying US taxes and doing jury duty. So there's different trade-offs, but many people do want to aim for citizenship. And usually you can qualify after you've had a green card for 5 years, but if you've married a US citizen, then it's 3 years. So the typical path for most people is they get a visa first, they come here. After they're situated and after they can ensure they meet the green card criteria, they would start the green card process, and then they would apply for citizenship. A few of my clients over the years have had established lives back in their home countries with kids, and they didn't want to relocate their family until they were confident that everybody could have a green card. So it is possible to get a green card directly from overseas, even if you've never been in the US before. And then, of course, you could apply for citizenship after. But usually most of my AI founder clients need a visa immediately. All right. So, and I thank you so much for adding more to the chat. And I'll just encourage those of you who have questions to please put them in the Zoom Q&A panel with the anonymous attendee option to hide your name. And because that's where I'm going to be looking for the questions in a little bit. And thank you to everybody for introducing yourselves. I see a fellow Stanford alum. Hello. I see people looking for co-founders. That's awesome. I see people in Paris, India, Germany. Hello, wie geht's? Canada, UK. This is such a global group. So I'm really excited to be here with you today. Okay, so now we're going to start talking about the immigration options themselves. Oh, we got an Aussie as well. Cool. And first we're going to talk about visas, which remember are those short-term temporary pathways to the United States. And then we're going to spend some time talking about green cards as well and how to qualify. I see somebody has a question about the semiconductor industry. So everything I'm going to be sharing with you applies universally to any industry. And just to like kind of give you a range. In addition to helping people, you know, at the beginning or in the height of their careers, we've helped people in obviously AI, enterprise SaaS, robotics, biotech, space tech, semiconductors, manufacturing, supply chain, design, the arts. So people doing social networks. So everything that I'm about to share is universally applicable across industries, with one exception. We'll talk about it later, but there's a green card pathway called the EB-2 National Interest Waiver Green Card. And that is for people whose work is in the national interest. And I would have a little bit of a narrower definition of what constitutes the national interest. So, and obviously that depends on the administration as well. But, you know, historically, I would not have said that, like companies exploring therapeutic uses of plant medicines, or, you know, like e-tobacco companies or those things might be trickier to get approved for the national interest. But it just depends on what you're doing. But everything else is pretty universal. And depending on the urgent need in your industry, we may be able to use that to your advantage to get your immigration through more quickly, depending on the category. Okay, so we have a really diverse group. So I'm going to share a really diverse set of options. And this is a sampling of options. So if you have questions about visas that I haven't talked about, you're welcome to put them in the chat window, and I'm happy to shed light on whatever I can at the end. But the first one I wanted to start off with is the L1 transfer. And if you qualify, it's probably like a great, fast, easy, like, okay, thank you, get in, get a green card option. So I just like to put that out there at first. It's wonderful because it does not matter what country you were born in. It does not matter what country you're a citizen of. It does not have a lottery, and there's no minimum wage, and we can get it any time of year. So the L1 is really great, and the L1 is for people transferring. And in order to qualify, you need to have a little bit more of an established company. So an early stage founder launching their Delaware C Corp for the first time and moving to the Bay Area, who's been a student in another country or working with, you know, remote developer contractors from Brazil or the Ukrainian diaspora or something, you probably don't qualify yet. In order to qualify for an L1, we need to show that you already have a business that's been operating in another country for at least 1 year, and that you've been working there for at least 1 year, getting normal pay, like paychecks. And some countries, if you're an owner, you can't get paid as an employee, but you can get distributions, and we can get a letter from your tax accountant showing that you were employed under the laws of your jurisdiction. But basically with an L1, we're saying, okay, there's a US company, there's a foreign company, they're owned by a similar group of people, or like one owns the other. And you've been working in the one in another country, and now the US one needs you. So we're gonna pull you to the US and transfer you here. And there's two flavors. The L1A is for managers and executives. So you have to be a people manager or a function manager. We have to show the org chart. We have to show how many people report to you back home. And the L1B is for somebody with specialized knowledge of the company's product or process. So I've gotten that for a lot of sales engineers in the past, but it can be used for a variety of roles. And so depending on which category you choose, the duration changes. So if your company is brand new in the US, we can ask for 1 year to do a new office L1. And if your company has already been doing business in the US and you have an established office here and employees and revenue, then we can ask for a 3-year L1. And then the extensions are 2 years. So the managers get up to 7 years and the specialized knowledge folks get up to 5 years. And in order to qualify these days, I would suggest that your foreign company, this is not baked into the law, so there's probably a lot of exceptions, but rule of thumb, I would say it's probably healthy to have at least 10 employees on your foreign payroll in order to justify this visa before coming here. And then when you get really big and you start doing more than $25 million of business in the US a year, or you have more than 10 L1s approved, then there's a really fancy thing you can do called a blanket L1 that all the big tech companies do. And then you can basically just like bring over unlimited talent from the other offices around the world after those individuals have worked there, but your company is pre-qualified to sponsor them. So it's a great option if your business is already cooking back home before you move here. And just on that note, you could also use it if you're already established in the US, but maybe you're creating like a subsidiary for your developer team in Bangalore, and then after a year you want to transfer people to the US. Sometimes people do it from that perspective as well. Okay, now another nice option that I just want to kind of address but move on from at the beginning, because it's great for some people, but for a lot of founders it's not as applicable. It's the E1 and E2 trade and investment visas based on treaties with your countries. So several large countries don't have treaties for this, specifically India, China, Brazil, Russia. If you're from one of those countries, or if those are your only citizenships, you can't qualify. Several other Western European nations, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, many other countries, including some countries that you might not think of, like I believe Armenia, have treaties with the US to allow for this. So the e-visa is great if you don't raise a bunch of venture capital funding, because in order to maintain the validity of it, in addition to being a citizen of Japan, let's say, in order for the visa to be valid, you have to demonstrate that the company remains at least 50% owned by citizens or companies of Japan. And so if you get to a Series B, for example, and the Japanese equity dilutes below 50% because you've taken on a lot of US VCs, it could negate your visa. So it's safest to do this if you're from a country that qualifies, if you're investing at least 100K into the US business, or you've already done a lot of trade between the two countries, and if you're going more in the direction of a bootstrap lifestyle business than a venture-backed business to maintain the equity and control. Okay, now we're going to get into more of the universally applicable founder visas, specifically the H-1B and the O-1. And both of these visas are not only applicable for founders, but they are also very applicable and historically were only used for employees. So if you're looking to hire top talent, friend, contractor you've been working with remotely, and you want to bring them into the United States, or for yourself, we've expanded these pathways enough so they're no longer just applicable for employees, but also founders can get them for themselves. So I have several slides about the H-1B, and then I have several slides about the O-1. And I'll then check for questions on these options before we move on to green cards. So the H-1B is probably the most famous US visa because for most people, for most of the last 25 years, this is the visa that's easiest to qualify for, and it's the hardest to get because there's an annual lottery. And so news reporters make a big deal about this every year of like H-1B lottery season, who's going to get picked, how many people. So because everybody's always on pins and needles. But why is it so popular? Well, it's so popular because it's easy to qualify for. You do not have to be Einstein. You just need a college degree or the equivalent. And then you're like, okay, well, I didn't graduate from college. What's the equivalent? Well, every year of college is equivalent to 3 years of work experience. So if you've been coding for 12 years and you went to zero college, you could still qualify because we could show that your 12 years of work experience is equivalent to a 4-year bachelor's degree in computer science or electrical engineering. So it's really easy, right? Like you have to show that there's a company in the US that has a professional job that requires somebody with this type of skill level, and that you, the candidate, are the person who has it. You don't need letters of recommendation. You don't need to be famous. You don't need to have worked anywhere in the past. It's really wonderful. But because that is the level of expectation regarding the requirements, Congress knew that it would be very popular, and they also wanted to protect American workers. So they set limits on how many people could get new H-1Bs every year, with certain exceptions for people whose work, they believed as a public policy would be good for the country, like people doing research in conjunction with universities and nonprofits. So normally about 300,000 candidates apply every year in this annual lottery, which happens in March. Basically, this cycle is on October 1st, the people who got selected in this year's lottery get to start their jobs. In November and December, we start, and actually even now, we start accepting clients that are US companies that want to sponsor people in next year's H-1B lottery. In January, February, and March, we do all of the preparations to put the companies and the candidates into the electronic H-1B lottery system. In March, usually, well, this year it was March 4th to 24th, but the specific dates changes. It's usually between 2 and 3 weeks in the middle of March. That's the window where the government registration portal is open, and we can help all of the companies register all of their candidates. And sometimes the system crashes, so that's why we try to start early and have everything prepared ahead of time. And then people find out if they were selected by March 31st. So going into April, if your candidate was selected in the first lottery draw. The people who were initially selected, those companies, have until June 30th to file the petition. And then the government starts making decisions during the summer. People use premium processing if they need to go get their visa stamps and their passports. And then they come in the last 10 days of September to start their jobs on October 1st. And then the cycle continues again. And that is how 85,000 people get new H-1B visas every year. And 65,000 of those are for people from anywhere in the world with no particular background. And 20,000 of those are specifically set aside for people who got advanced degrees from US colleges and universities. So if you attended a US college or a US university and got your master's degree or your PhD, you would have an extra boost in the lottery and an increased chance of getting selected. Now, The lottery has been in the media lately because there are potential changes that may be coming in March of 2026. This administration, I believe, will push very hard to get those changes through and have the lottery proceed in the new manner in March. However, there's also a large contingent of institutions that would likely litigate if this happens. And if a judge decides to put a temporary restraining order or injunction on the government, and they could prevent this system from changing in time for next March's lottery. So there's probably a fair chance that the lottery will proceed as normal next year, but likely chance that by March of 2027, it will be changed, in whatever legal manner ends up happening. And the changes that this administration wants to make are that they believe that it would be more fair to allocate H-1B worker visas, not based on random selection in a completely random lottery, the way it's done now. But they want to prioritize people with the highest wages relative to their industries first. So it's like a sort Z to A on the spreadsheet of salary percentile, essentially, if you want to think about it mathematically. When somebody's applying for an H-1B, part of what we do as attorneys is we figure out what wage level their job is based on a government database of salary classifications. And so wage level 1 is the lowest. It's typically what recent college grads get. Level 4 is the highest. It's typically what senior executives get. So you'd see a wide variety of wages, like in the Bay Area for a software developer of applications, maybe level 1 is $130,000 and maybe level 4 is $250,000. But if you're a nurse in Idaho, maybe level 1 is $48,000 and maybe level 4 is $74,000. I'm just making those numbers up. I don't know if they're correct. But basically, the government would say, okay, let's give visas to all the level 4 people first. Then if there's extras, let's look at the level 3 people. If more level 3 people than the number of extras exist, then we would create a lottery for them, and so on and so on. And the prior estimates suggest that basically people with level 1 will not get selected. People with level 2 will probably not get selected either. And how that will shake out really remains to be seen. If these changes go through, they would most dramatically affect recent F1 graduates who are on OPT and STEM OPT, because their employers just might not be able to get them H-1Bs based on the wage ranges that are available. And the people who would be helped the most are people getting jobs in big tech companies that can afford to pay them high wages, and well-funded venture-backed startups where making an investment in that person's salary is a necessity for the business to proceed, and it's well-funded. So it remains to be seen if and when that new proposal will come into effect. But that's specifically for the lottery. Now, there's also a way to get an H-1B visa without the lottery, and I'm going to be coming to that in my next slides. But I do also want to mention that when we're setting up an H-1B, there are several variables. Number one, we have to make sure it's a specialty occupation, so it has to be some sort of professional job. Number two, there is that prevailing wage based on the level that I mentioned. So we do have to prove that the company has the ability to pay that person the prevailing wage for the amount of time they're going to be working. Additionally, there are options with H-1Bs that you can have one H-1B at a time, or you can have multiple concurrent H-1Bs at the same time. And with H-1Bs, an H-1B is typically for full-time work, but it can also be for part-time work. So we have gotten people H-1Bs for a second job that could be from 5 to 20 hours a week in addition to their day job. We've gotten them for people who are only gonna work, 5 to 20 hours a week, and that's their only H-1B. Somebody could have 3 H-1Bs at 15 hours each. There's no test that is legally defined right now for how much you're allowed to work, but I would say it needs to be reasonable and you need to be able to pay for yourself in the United States. So you can't work 100 hours a week and you can't, go broke. You have to be able to survive here. So that's kind of the range. So we can use that in different ways for different companies. So if we're doing an H-1B for you, we're going to need a lot of documents, your job description, an offer letter, financial documents from the company, marketing materials explaining your product or services. So definitely, you'll need to be organized. And that's actually one of the most challenging things for early stage founders, where it's your first company and maybe it's not been set up properly, maybe it's not in compliance. So, and a lot of people with low budgets really need to think carefully about their prevailing wage, their number of hours they're going to be able to work, their international travel needs. So we actually put together a consulting package where we will advise early stage founders and baby companies on what they need to do from an immigration perspective to get it set up properly. And what we're using that for right now is a lot of H-1B transfers for people who are already in the US, who've already gotten an H-1B through the lottery, who are already working at Google, Apple, Meta, Amazon, etc. And many of them are often from India, and they're facing long wait times for their green cards. And if they get laid off, they would be in a 60-day grace period, and they're trying to get layoff insurance. They're trying to build their startups on the side. So we're actually helping a lot of founders transfer their H-1Bs to their own companies for part-time concurrent H-1Bs or, transfers for part-time. If you're going to go part-time, I would caution you about international travel. So that would be a conversation we would have in a consultation. But this has been very successful. And some of the legal updates that have made this successful is you no longer need another American in your company. It used to be that people believed that you needed to have a board with an American who could fire you and all this stuff. But the law doesn't require that. The law changed slightly and it doesn't require it. And we've been doing it for years now without that. So my number one piece of business advice is don't sacrifice your business to solve your immigration. I've seen too many founders who, like 10 years ago, when nobody knew how to do this, when I hadn't figured it out yet, we had to be really conservative. And so they gave up a lot of things that were really important, and to the detriment of their co-founder relationships, their equity, and it led to founder fallout in some situations and people losing out on companies that were very valuable that they had created the core technologies for. So please don't involve random people. Just talk to us first. We'll tell you if you need to do anything like that. But just to put it in perspective, recently we got our first H-1B approved, where it was for literally the first employee number one at the company, who was the founder and who was the CEO and who signed his own paperwork, and it just got approved immediately with no request for evidence. So we've been very successful with that. I'm very proud of that, and it's something we're happy to help people with. And then that leads to the question of, okay, well, if you don't have an H-1B yet, but you want one because you don't qualify for an O-1, which is the visa we're going to talk about next, how can you get an H-1B at any time of year and not have to deal with the lottery? And do that for your own startup or your first employee or for you as the founder. Okay, it's totally doable. We've been doing it for years. There is a way to get CAP exempt H-1Bs, and this is to prioritize people working in organizations that have a connection to nonprofit research. So basically, universities are able to get unlimited H-1Bs for their employees, and they don't have to put them through the lottery. Nonprofits affiliated with universities also have that exemption, and there's things like a Global Talent Fellowship, where you basically become a fellow for a nonprofit. They will employ you to teach US college students for 5 hours a week. They'll get you an H-1B without the lottery, and then we can piggyback on a second concurrent H-1B for your private company. So we can refer you to that organization, and we collaborate with them to help our qualified clients get cap exempt. But there's also a new regulation that came out in January that's more about the direct affiliation between a private company and a university research lab. So if there is a startup that has access to a university lab or a collaboration partnership, an IP deal, a licensing agreement, and your employee is going to spend at least 50% of their time working directly for the private company, but in work that relates to the university research lab, we can actually now try to qualify the private company as being cap exempt directly without bringing in a third-party nonprofit. So that is something I would like to explore more. And if you might have that, capability with your startup, please let me know, because there's some exciting legal opportunities there to get you a visa more quickly and with less financial overhead than some of the other established programs. So basically, if you're in another country and you want to get an H-1B to come to the US and work on your startup, and you've never had an H-1B before, we can put you in the lottery in spring, and then also we can explore these cap exempt H-1B options to be able to arrive in the US sooner than October of 2026. So that's H-1Bs. And before I move on to L1s, I did see an H-1B question here, which is, I am a US citizen. I hold a Master's of Science degree in electrical engineering and another one in computer science. How do I find out about H-1B positions? I'm not sure what this question is about, but it has something to do with potentially looking for a job for an American. But basically the way the H-1B system works is any employer can seek the H-1B from the US government for a particular candidate. A lot of requirements need to be met. There's a wage requirement to make sure that the wage doesn't disrupt wages of any Americans. And then the company is also free to hire any Americans they would also like. And then whenever the H-1B expires, the person has to, and the company have to qualify for an extension and prove that the employment is still valid and authorized. So thank you for that question. Okay, so now we're gonna move forward into, oops, it's not what I wanted to do. Go back. All right, here we go. We're gonna go into O1s. Okay. And get my questions back. One second here. I'll continue on. Great. Okay, so I'm gonna get through O1s, and then we're gonna do green cards pretty quickly, and then I'm gonna go to all of your questions. So thank you so much for all the amazing questions and for staying here with me. I appreciate it. Okay. Okay. So O1s are the most popular type of visa for international founders to move to the United States for the first time, because you don't have to worry about a lottery or cap exempt or university research affiliation or a prevailing wage. They're very popular. However, to be clear, some of the disadvantages are that your spouse will not have an opportunity to get a dependent work permit you would have to go through the green card process. We talked about the L1 and the E2. On those, your spouse can automatically work. We talked about the H1B. With that one, if you reach certain milestones of the green card process, your spouse can qualify for a work permit, but with an O1, your spouse cannot work. But there is another advantage for very early stage founders, which there is no prevailing wage requirement. So, we've gotten O1s for people who are going to make $60,000 a year and live in a bunk bed in a room in a hacker home and eat ramen in the Bay Area. So there's two flavors. We will choose which one is appropriate for you. It's really UX UI designers who can kind of like go either way between the categories. But there's O1As for people with extraordinary ability in business, science, engineering, and the O1B for people with expertise in the arts. Now, another really wonderful thing about the O1 that I've been creating this pathway for people for several years now, but I basically took a page from Hollywood and copied and pasted their immigration strategy to Silicon Valley. In Hollywood, artists and entertainers are able to get O1 visas with an agent so that they can come, they can be in a production, they can film a commercial, they can get paid to give a speech, they can work on their nonprofit, they can have some periods in between their gigs. And this is all done because they have an agent who sponsors them on their petition. And so we've been able to successfully do the exact same thing for people working in startups. They too can be sponsored for an O1 by an agent. And we can refer you to an agent. They have reasonable rates, or you could even find a colleague or a friend in the field to serve as your agent. Most of my clients prefer to use a professional agent because it just helps keep your personal relationships clear. But that allows you to work on your own startup, do some consulting hours for your friends' companies, get advisory equity to help other startups. You can be an angel investor. You could do whatever like day trading you want if that's related to your field. You could get money from a book publication. So if we do an O1 with an agent, you can basically be self-employed in your field of extraordinary ability, which is a very liberating feeling and a great way to make money and be able to also test a lot of companies and ideas when you're in the US. So in order to qualify, you have to meet at least 3 of the evidentiary criteria, and we usually demonstrate 4 to 6 letters of recommendation from experts in your field. So here are the 8 categories for the O1 visa. And they were traditionally used by people in academia who are researchers and not founders. So this slide is really my personal interpretation of how founders and people in AI startups and semiconductor industry or whatever it is you're doing to be able to qualify for the O1 visa. So first, we need to show that you have won awards in your field or that you've gotten recognition in your field. That could be winning pitch competitions, it could be winning government scientific grants, it could be receiving venture capital funding. So there are many, many ways to qualify for awards. Additionally, if you're a member of organizations that are hard to get into, such as accelerators, scientific conference committees, being an advisor or venture scout, those could all be ways to show that you're a member of organizations that are hard to get into. What you created matters. If you're a creator of a disruptive technology, if it has traction, maybe in past companies, you got patents that are in commercial use right now. If your technology has the potential to disrupt an industry, all of those things can be used to demonstrate original contributions of significance in your field. being a leader matters. And this could be being the CEO or CTO or COO or CPO or whatever, CXO of your future startup. And it can also include all of your past jobs, past startups, anything you've done previously. If there's publicity about you or your company or your product, we can find ways to weave that in. It can be in technology, online newspapers, or business online newspapers or magazines. It can be in newspapers in your country. It could be in scientific magazines. There are many types of ways that people write about other people and their work. And so you could leverage them for yourself and for your startup and use what you have for your O1. Being a judge counts. That can be coding competitions, pitch competitions, hackathons. There are many types of events that you've maybe judged. You could also peer review scientific publications of the work of others. You could also be an author, and you could also give speeches. And that could be in conferences, that could be peer-reviewed publications, that could be viral blogs, it could be company blogs. So there's a lot of ways to write things. And then your pay matters, and that's not just your salary and your prior job in your home country. We can use that, but we can also use the equity valuation of your startup, even if you've raised on Safe Notes. So many ways to use these categories for founders and people in early stage technology companies. And if we have any investors or VCs or angels, all of these categories also apply to you. For example, we have used the O1 for so many different people. You could get it as a founder. You might use a certain set of criteria. You could do it as a influencer. Maybe you have a lot of awards, publicity, you're a leader, you're an author, you make a lot of money, or maybe on the other side of the spectrum, you're a complete introvert and you're an inventor. So we can mix and match the O1 categories in a lot of different ways, really just depending on what it is you like doing, what you're good at, what you want to do in the future. So remember, all you need are 3 of the categories. You do not need 4 or 5 or 6. If you have more, of course, we're going to use it, but you have to have 3 categories with quality and substance in order to qualify. Okay, now a few notes on green cards before we move to the questions. And I see a lot of interesting questions. So I'm going to try to focus more on the questions. I'll try to give you a brief overview of green cards, because visas are really the way that you're going to get here and do your work in the short term. Green cards are the strategy to stay here long term. And as I mentioned, they're a multi-year process. So it's not like something we could do overnight for you. Okay. And we will have an audio version of this presentation available, and my team is going to be able to share that with everybody in attendance. So thank you so much for your questions and for paying attention and for being here. Okay, so green card process overview. Green cards, there are many paths up the green card mountain. Green cards can be through family, like marrying an American and the show 90 Day Fiance. They can be through another family member. They can be through an investment. There's no gold card yet. That was kind of in the news a lot, but nothing has actually substantiated there yet. That was the $5 million idea to build to be able to buy a green card. We don't have that yet. And it would be a gold card, not a green card. And then the employment-based pathways. So traditionally, the employment-based pathways have 3 steps. But in the pathways that work best for founders, you actually get to skip step 1. But I'll just tell you what these 3 steps are so you have the framework. So step 1 is perm. That's where the US company tries to hire an American to replace you. And if they can't find anybody, then they go to the Department of Labor and say, hey, we need a labor certification. We have to prove that there weren't any Americans to do this job. So now we really need our guy to come here and get a green card. So that's called the PERM process. In step 2, that's the I-140 petition. And that's where the company says to the Immigration Service, USCIS, okay, great. Department of Labor agreed. There's no Americans to do this job. Here's our labor certification. We really got to hire you. And so you're special because of XYZ. You meet all of the criteria for whatever employment-based category we're seeking: employment-based 1, employment-based 2, employment-based 3. And then once that gets approved, then you and your family are able to go on to step 3, and you can say like, hey, I'm that guy. Here's my wife. Here's our kids. Here's our background checks. Here's our medical histories. We're good people. We're clear. Please let us come in. Let us each get a green card in the United States. So that's called adjustment of status if you're in the United States, and immigrant visa if you're outside of the United States. So for the 2 pathways that are best for founders, we actually skip step 1 and we just do steps 2 and step 3, and you can self-petition for them. You do not need a company to sponsor you. So here are those employment-based US green card pathways. EB1, we're going to talk about in more detail on another slide. That is for extraordinary ability. It's very much like the O1. There's another EB1B category for researchers, and that is typically sponsored by universities and also by large technology and engineering companies that have several researchers on staff that will sponsor them in that category for a green card. EB1C is also important to pay attention to if you were interested in the L1 visa for intercompany transfers that I spoke about earlier, because EB1C is the special path for the multinational managers and executives to qualify for a green card after they move to the US and after the company has been doing business for at least 1 year in the United States. Now, the other very popular option for founders that we'll also talk about in a separate slide is called the EB2 National Interest Waiver Green Card, and I'll speak about that more in a moment. That's the other one that you can self-petition in addition to the EB1A. Most companies will do PERM plus EB2 for advanced degree or 5 years of work experience, or EB3 for PERM and skilled workers. And then EB5 is the traditional, invest $1 million, get a green card after you can show that the company has created jobs for Americans. And that is the category that this administration seems like they would like to replace with the gold card if and when that comes to pass. Okay, so I do want to spend a little bit more time on the EB1A. We've done so many of these in the last few years, and it's like an O1, but it's harder, essentially. You have to show that you've been at the top of your field for some time in a country or in the world. But all the categories are very much like the O1. Did you win prizes, awards? Is there media coverage? Did you invent something? Did you have an important job? Did you make a lot of money? Did you write stuff? All of those are the main categories. And it is truly the fastest green card opportunity. When we file this, we can request that the government issue a decision on the step 2 I-140 in 15 business days, which is like 3 calendar weeks. If you were not born in India or China, currently there is no additional wait on something called the visa bulletin in order to get your spot in line to be able to file step 3, the I-485. And the I-485 is taking 12, 24, 36 months. That's what's published. But as I mentioned, we had a family that just got theirs approved in 6 weeks. So it's a very unpredictable, volatile time when it comes to processing times. So it could be way, way faster. So all of my Indian clients eventually want to get an EB1, but even for them, if this is their first I-140 approval, and they're just getting a spot in line called a priority date to wait in line on the visa bulletin for their I-485 to become current. And I know I'm saying a lot of jargon. Most of this you won't need to know unless you're from India, and then you probably know what I'm saying. Or China. But if you are just getting your first priority date and it's in EB1 and you were born in India, I suspect it might be a 4 to 5 year wait until your priority date is current and you can file for an I-485. Now, if you were born in the rest of the world, you might also be interested in an easier green card pathway. This is the one I mentioned that's in the national interest, the EB2 national interest waiver, EB2 NIW green card. It is for researchers, it is for founders. And really we want to show that you have traction, you're already in the US building and working on your main project that's your future endeavor that is in the national interest. And it's a bit slower. The adjudication process takes 30 business days, which is about 45 calendar days. And there's a backlog for everybody in the world that's about 1 to 2 years right now. So after your wait is over, then you get to move to step 3 and you get to file your adjustment of status. Okay, so just a little bit more detail on how we might be able to help you before we go into the questions. So let's see. First of all, I have a complimentary online course that I filmed. It's 15 videos and it's how to become more qualified for an O1A, an EB1A, or an EB2 NIW. It's available online and we'll be sending out this link, but there's a QR code. It's on our website, alcorn.law/courses. And a lot of people have taken it and gone on to get visas and green cards. Over 1,000 people have taken the class so far. So it's very exciting to be able to have created that. And I want more people to have access to the opportunities that are available and out there. We'll send the follow-up link for that in our email. We also offer a 4-week assessment and evaluation program that culminates in an attorney gap analysis on whether you are qualified yet for an O1A, EB1A, or EB2 national interest waiver green card. This program is called Legal Launch. It's 4 weeks, it's $2,500, and we would credit that to your future visa or green card after, if we determine that you are ready to go. Okay, next up, if you do want to meet with me or one of my team members, we'll be offering you a 20-minute Zoom consultation. And we're going to send you a questionnaire in advance where you give us some brief details about your situation. I tried to make it as simple as possible, but we'll need you to provide us with information so that we can assess which visa options might be the best way for you to get to your goal, whatever that may be. And when you're thinking about the immigration process and what's involved, there's money and there's time and energy. And so usually, we and most immigration lawyers charge on a flat fee basis, not an hourly basis, unlike corporate lawyers. And most immigration services tend to be between $5,000 and $15,000 for a given process, depending on what it is and how long it will last, and if it's an extension or additional services for family members, just to give you a ballpark. And then the government filing fees are typically between $500 and $5,000, including premium processing, if you opt for that. But also there's your time. We need a significant amount of information and materials. So we do need you to have the capacity and to prioritize to spend the time to give us what we need so that we can do your case for you. Okay, and so with that, I am going to be turning to the Q&A. before I do, I did want to ask, if this session gave you, if it sparked any insights or gave you any additional clarity, I would be so grateful if you could leave me a quick online review. And I'll put that link in the chat window, but that would really help other people who need access to this information to be able to find what they need. So I'll put that in the chat window right now. And if you can drop me a quick review, I'd really appreciate it. Okay, but now I'm going to go into the questions, and I'm going to leave my contact information up here if you'd like to book a consultation or anything else. And as I mentioned, I'm going to be going through the questions in the Q&A panel. So if you put a question in the webinar chat, now would be a good time to copy and paste it into the Q&A panel so that I can be sure to answer it for you. Okay. So the first question is going to be from somebody in Albania who is a civil engineer and who wants to follow their American dream as a construction project manager in the United States. He writes, I've tried so hard to find a job in the US, but the sponsorship is found to be very difficult to nearly impossible to be insured. What do you suggest? Okay, well, let's see. First of all, I'm going to check if if Albania, I believe Albania does not have an E2 treaty with the United States, but I'm just going to check that. No, I'm wrong. That is okay. I did have an Albanian client once who got an E2. Albania does not have an E1 treaty for trade, but it does have an E2 treaty for investment. So one bold scenario would be to invest $100,000 in starting a construction company into the United States, because then you could come here as the CEO and be a construction project manager at the company and just get jobs directly and not need to depend on anybody for sponsorship. That's one option. Another option that many people do is they would enroll as an F1 student to get an advanced degree in the United States in a STEM field, science, technology, engineering, or math, to be able to then qualify for 1 year of regular optional practical training plus 2 years of STEM OPT after they graduate to have 3 years of work permission. That is where most graduates get jobs and get sponsored in the H-1B lottery by their employers. The other thing you could do is you could get a CAP exempt H-1B through one of those programs that I mentioned. I could refer you, and that would allow you to tell a future employer, I'm not subject to the H-1B lottery. All you have to do is add a second concurrent full-time H-1B for me, and I can get on a visa and hop on a plane and move right away. So those are the types of things that could help set you up for success. You could also try to start your own company and get an H-1B visa, either through the lottery or the CAP exempt program, to come to the United States and start working here on that. So there are a variety of options, and they do take some hustle and some entrepreneurial mindset potentially, but they are possible, and you're welcome to reach out and we can provide a referral. The most reliable CAP exempt organization does have a sponsorship fee of $4,000 a month. So that can be a substantial investment for some, which is one of the reasons why I'm trying to develop that university affiliation so that some companies can qualify directly for H-1Bs that are CAP exempt. So thank you for that question. Okay, my next question that I received, if I had a company outside the US, why not buy or otherwise do an M&A, merger and acquisition, with a US company as a way to move into the US market? That seems much quicker and easier. Yeah, that would be a great option. That requires funding and know-how. So that might not be the right fit for everybody. But for example, if you wanted to qualify for an L1 by purchasing a US company and transferring to it, that would absolutely work. Next question. Having a 2-year home residency constraint from a previous J1 and as an O1 visa holder, what are my best options? Go back to my country and apply for a green card after 2 years? Is there any other path I could explore? I have a PhD and 5 years of industry experience. Okay, so Andres, they changed the law about who is subject to the 2-year foreign residency requirement in December. If you got a Fulbright scholarship, you're probably still subject, but if you did not, if you got a normal, like based on a skills shortage, not based on government funding type of visa, you may no longer be subject. The rules were dramatically rewritten, so it depends on your country, your occupational classification in the DS 2019. So I would encourage you to reach out to me and email my team your documents from your prior J1, including your visa stamp, any visa stamps, and any DS 2019s. And we can do a consultation for legal advice, which would be $300, and I can look this up for you and figure out, because there's a possibility you might no longer be subject to the 2-year foreign residence requirement. Now, if you are, what many of my Fulbright or Stanford Med School O1 clients do is it's a slow process. They basically like go home every summer for 3 or 4 months and they try to build up the 4 years kind of through like mini sabbaticals or times working remotely while they're staying in the US, maintaining their normal employment. So happy to help you explore that more. Oh, I see it's a Fulbright. Okay, the Fulbright's like the one thing that can't change. So I would recommend the second option where it really just depends on you and your life. Would you rather get it all over with and do it in 2 years, or would you rather kind of do it like piecemeal and maintain your O1 for a long time? You could get an O1 through an agent and be able to do a variety of types of jobs. But yeah, definitely happy to chat further there, Andres. Thank you. Larry asked, is 855-546-0015 the contact that leads directly to me, or would I have my own designated line or extension? That is the main number for my firm. I have 2 full-time client journey coordinators who are standing by on call to speak with you and help you schedule me with me. I'm the founder of my firm. I have 20 employees, so the phone number is the best way to get in touch, or via email, or our website has this questionnaire link with the QR code. And yeah, you're welcome for that. Okay. We talked about the question of, is there any requirement in the semiconductor industry? It's just much easier to argue national interest for semiconductor industry jobs. That mostly helps with the EB2 NIW green card, but it might help with other visas as well. Okay, next question. This is from somebody who is a French citizen and founder of a startup using the language of physics. Oh wow, they've developed a new seat system, and they've developed an ontological and reasoned AI. What is the best visa I should apply for? The O1, the H1B. I was thinking of coming back in November and to try to get my visa from the US. Well, if you're on ESTA and you come to the US, you're not allowed to change your status while you're in the United States. You would have to go back to Paris and apply for a visa there in order to come back. If you want to move here in November, the time to start would be now. The O1 typically takes 3 months to prepare, and then a month to get a decision and a month to book a visa appointment. So it takes about 5 to 6 months. We could expedite it and aim for November, but the H1B could happen on a much faster time period. But yeah, we'd be happy to help. And it sounds like either the O1 or the H1B might be a good option for you. And that person, has a B1, B2 visitor visa. So thank you for that. So yeah, you could theoretically change your status when you're here in those 6 months to O1 or H1B, but it would be better to start preparing for that process now than waiting until November to get started. Okay. Oh, and thank you, Larry, for your feedback as well. I kind of have like one eye on the chat, but I'm trying to go through the questions in the Q&A. And I have 8 more minutes, so this might be all the questions we can get to, but I'll do my best. The next question is, I recently graduated with a master's in computer science from a US university, and I was hired as a computer science lecturer. The international office told me I only have 1 year since my school isn't in the E-Verify system. I'm struggling to secure a tech job. What would you advise? There are fellowships. Am I remembering correctly? Okay. I would say, first of all, ask the university if they will sponsor you for a CAP exempt H-1B when your OPT runs out. Also, look for jobs that are in E-Verify that will sponsor STEM OPT. Also, if you ever thought about being a founder, we do help lots of founders get STEM OPT. Depending on your university, they may have requirements for if you have a certain amount over a certain amount of equity. But I would say step 1 is asking the university if they're willing to sponsor you for a CAP exempt H-1B to continue your work there as a CS lecturer. And then, yeah, maybe explore doing STEM through your startup. Yeah, and you're very welcome. Okay, I'm a senior software engineer using AWS, a project management PMP certified, have more than 15 years of working experience, an Irish citizen starting a company. What's the best route for me? I think it depends on if you're starting your company in Ireland or in the US, if it's been incorporated yet, if you have co-founders, if you have visas to travel here right now, how much time you want to spend in the United States. Probably the H-1B is good to look at. The O-1 is good to chart a course for. You might qualify for the E-2 with your Irish citizenship. If you're starting in Ireland and have a team there, maybe we could look at the L1. So I think there's a lot to consider, and I'd be happy to discuss that with you in a call. And let's see. Okay, next question. I'm currently working in the US on an H-1B visa and have been employed here for about 12 years with a well-established research organization. I have long-term plans to launch a startup, but I'm uncertain about how this can be pursued while on an employment-based visa. Additionally, I'm seeking guidance on the possibility of an expedited path to obtaining a green card. Securing permanent residency would not only provide stability for my family, but also allow me to confidently pursue entrepreneurial opportunities. Live in the SF Bay area. Yeah, we should definitely talk. We can transfer your H-1B to your startup. You could get a part-time concurrent H-1B to do your startup on the side. Your research organization could sponsor you for an EB-1B green card if you want to keep working there. You might be able to sponsor yourself for an EB-1A green card. So I think you'll have a lot of options, and I would be happy to discuss them with you. This next person is of African origin, an Australian citizen, has a PhD, 2 masters, a certificate in AI, and is a founder of a fintech decentralized IoT network, published many papers and 2 books, best conference paper, best section conference. I would say you should definitely explore an O-1 visa for extraordinary ability, followed by an EB-1A green card. We would be happy to help you with that. And you can start with our legal launch process if you would like, but definitely reach out to schedule a consultation. And then, yeah, if somebody's going to file a patent in the semiconductor industry, that could definitely be helpful for an O1A, an EB1A, or an EB2 NIW. Okay, so we have a couple more minutes, and I'm just going to review the webinar chat to see if there's any other questions that maybe didn't make it into the Q&A panel, and I'll take a look there to see if there's anything else I can answer. If you do have any last questions, you can put them in the Q&A panel right now. Okay, let's see. Yeah, I love it's such an amazing global group here. Thank you all for joining today from all so many parts of the world. I think we got everything pretty much. Oh, here's one. Do we help Americans enter into a new market, keeping their company US based, or conversely, helping an American mover abroad to a European country? So not my firm, but I do have an extensive network, Peter, of European immigration attorneys who could help you explore your own personal immigration. And another thing that you ought to consider as an American would be the US Department of Commerce, their trade and investment services actually do a lot to help US companies expand into foreign markets with relationships and supporting you to get tax incentives in those other markets. So definitely reaching out to them. And likewise, everybody's own governments might have programs that allow them to help expand their companies into the United States. Okay. Great. Okay, I so appreciate the feedback. Looks like some final comments. Thank you so much for your compliments. I'm glad I could take a complex topic and break it down into usable bit-sized pieces of information. That's fun for me and my brain, and I'm glad I can do it to help you. And somebody asked if an American friend with his own company is able to help as an agent. Absolutely. Some people don't want to stress their friendships by asking for favors like that, but totally it could work as long as he's kind of working in the same field as you. Somebody born in Canada who became a naturalized citizen can still expand into Europe. If you have a US passport, that's a lifetime status. Healthcare industry is favorable, like semiconductor. And let's see, then last question. A Greek and British citizen, South African born, bachelor's of science, master's of science in sports nutrition from US University, very interested in studying further in the US to relaunch your business in health and wellness, want to benefit the US and worldwide, want to award in business pitching, relationship with a US citizen, not too sure if you want to get married. Marriage is always the most efficient route, but I would say live your life and do the right thing for yourself first. The government's very, very cautious about fraudulent marriages, and it's also just extremely stressful to get married prematurely to somebody, even if it is a real relationship. So I would definitely say, exploring the L1, the H1B, the O1, those could be things that would help you, Nina. So thank you so much. And thanks for the compliment that I could be an engineer. So yeah, cool. All right. Well, I have to go. Thank you so much for being with me here today. Thank you, Rob, Idea to IPO. I really appreciate the opportunity. You're an amazing audience. I love the engagement. I love the questions, and definitely keep in touch with me. Looking forward to seeing how I can support you in the future. Thank you so much and have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.